I don't know if you guys know, but this is getting to be, I think June is Gay Pride Month, and I think July 14th, this weekend, is going to be the parade here in San Diego. So I've had two things in the last week. My online knitting community has the big rainbow flag welcoming you when you log in. And then I go to the YMCA today, here in PQ, and they've got rainbow flags to celebrate, you know, Pride, whatever. So my question is, what should I do with that? You know, should I quit the Y, quit my online knitting community? I mean, I wrote a letter to the online knitting community and said, I don't like this because, you know, and I said, I think everybody should be treated well and evenly, and, you know, everybody has dignity. But I pointed out some of the things that I think the flag stands for. And today at the Y, you know, I had a talk with the person who evidently is running it. It turns out, I looked up later, Joe Biden has connected with the YMCA in the United States. So they're doing this all over the country with gay pride flags at the Y, and they're focusing on inclusion. You know, that this is a symbol of inclusion. And I said, I don't think it's a symbol of inclusion for me. It makes me feel targeted. You know, this looks like, to me, a symbol that says I'm a bigot and a hater. And I don't like that because I don't think I am a bigot and a hater. So I explained to her, you know, a little bit of my philosophy on all of that. But, you know, I'm kind of torn between quit the Y and crawl into a little hole somewhere, you know, where we can all be together with like-minded people, or, you know, do I stand out on the sidewalk and hand out a little brochure that says, I know the flags look good to a lot of people, but I have a different idea, or, you know, what can I do and how far should we go?
Go ahead.
I think it's very individualistic in that situation. My wife we were leaving Del Coronado today, and it looked like they had rainbow banners on the big cupola. But holy cow, now we're not supposed to go to Del Coronado anymore. I'm not quite sure what the best response is to that. Certainly you can make your views known if you have appropriately done, but I really think that the struggle is going to come in the interpersonal connection when these topics come up and you have an opportunity to tell people what you believe and why. It's gotten to the point with the rainbow flag thing that it's going to be everywhere. So I don't know how you're going to get away from it. I agree it should not be that way. And like Father has said, the culture has almost turned so much that it feels like we have no chance of ultimately prevailing. That doesn't mean that we could or should quit. A lot of people, probably most people, feel that they don't like the direction of the culture in that respect, and they would appreciate when the opportunity comes if you speak your mind. But, you know, are you going to pull away from everything now that displays a rainbow flag? At one point you could do that. I'm not even sure, to be perfectly honest, it's practical anymore because of the pervasiveness of it.
Listen, the early Christians, am I off or on? Sorry, I'm on. Okay, the early Christians lived in a very immoral and pagan society. So one of the issues that comes up is you want to buy meat at the marketplace. Well, almost all the meat at the marketplace you're going to buy was sacrificed with some pagan incantation into idols, you know. And some people, Christians, had sensitive consciences and they were scandalized. Paul says, look, those pagan gods don't even exist. You're yourself not participating in the pagan ritual or approving of it. It's okay if you buy that meat, you know. So it's a different situation, but I think you are not guilty, first of all, just for being in the Y. You're not making any choices sort of promoting this false notion of gay pride. But you have to decide when can I or should I speak up against it, you know.
It's just like the ideology and the indoctrination is just everywhere, it seems like.
Yes,
so,
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And the challenge is, what do you do with your children?
I'll tell you a clear line you wouldn't cross. So I know that in some universities, and this may be back when the triangle was the sign for gay rights, that faculty members that were considered to be, you know, inclusive were encouraged to put these symbols on their own doors.
Right.
And if you didn't put it on your door, then you would be labeled a bigot. But I would say you could never do it yourself. You could never put it on your door yourself.
Right.
That's a case. There are times when we have to suffer for our faith.
Right.
I mean, Jesus says, "Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and say everything
You draw
bad
the line
because of you."
in them making you speak personally
Yeah.
in some way. But you can't prevent everyone else from doing it, unfortunately. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, everybody has the right to speak, but you can't get away from that messaging, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much for coming. All right, I got a question for each of you. First off, is there any legal argument to, say, reinforcing the original definition of marriage, saying that the state has misused the term, that it belongs in the church and of the church, that it's older than any state on the face of the earth, and that they're just not allowed to touch it? If you want to have something outside of, in the presence of God, and outside of one man and one woman, or multiple women, as you mentioned before, if you want something outside of those definitions, then it needs to be called something different. It needs to be called a civil union or something more attractive. And following that, in the case that something like that could happen, is there any moral objection to a cake shop owner creating a beautiful, creative cake for a same-sex civil union?
I would say no. So first or second question. I mean, if you're a Christian, you don't just believe that same-sex marriage is wrong. You think sodomy is wrong. Okay. So civil union would be a public proclamation that we're engaging in sodomy. We're engaging in pseudo-sexual activity, right? The misuse of our sexual organs. So I don't think a Christian could do that in good conscience. Right. That's the main problem of participating in the gay marriage. It's a public proclamation that we're in. Gay people can be best friends. That's not what's wrong with the relationship, right? It's the misuse of the human body. In terms of the term marriage, I mean, I agree with you that now what the society calls marriage is completely different than what the church understands marriage to be. In fact, we have many Catholics who get civilly married and won't get married in the church, and then maybe they'll get later. And I try to explain to them, listen, this thing that the state is giving you called marriage has almost nothing to do with what the church considers marriage anymore. It's not for life, right? You can get married and divorced 10 times by the state, right? It's not even, it's not open to life. You don't have to be open. Like in a Catholic church, marriage in itself means an openness to life. But the state doesn't require that. It doesn't even have to be sexual complementarity. So I don't think we can force the state, but I think the church, see, personally, I would not, when I do a wedding for someone who's never been married before, civilly, I have to sign the marriage license, right? And that's the same document that two men get married, two women get married would have signed by someone else. I personally think that the church should almost, you may disagree, I think they should say, you're calling it marriage. It's like Inigo Montoya and the Princess Bride. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Or at least we don't mean the same thing by the word. So we're going to have to use parentheses or quotation marks rather. So yes, they're different realities. I don't know how we get around the linguistic problem.
Like the separation of church and state would say that the state can acknowledge what's done in the church, but can't influence what's done in the church. So to say that a marriage is strictly
the state
for
gives,
the churches and synagogues.
The state right now gives legal effect to religious marriage.
Correct.
So
and
I'm
they can
acting
give
as
that
a
effect
dual
to
agent.
anything.
I'm an agent of the state and I'm an agent of the church when I sign the marriage rights.
Correct. And they can give that same legal effect to whatever term they want to call it.
Yeah.
Is there any possibility of just claiming that back for us?
I hope so, but I'm not sure what form it's going to take yet. I think that we'll have the justices on the Supreme Court to make it happen. I think there'll be some type of challenge because you're right. They've changed the definition in a way that it does not make sense. And I always put same-sex marriage in quotes because I can't recognize it as a marriage because it doesn't have the elements of a marriage, which includes one man, one woman, and a conjugal union. So hopefully the opportunity will present itself when we have the change on the Supreme Court to have that revisited, such as the opportunity to revisit Roe v. Wade hopefully soon too. You're right. It needs to change, but right now we're kind of stuck with it.
I don't think, even if Obergefell is reversed, I don't think it solves the problem because even before that you have no-fault divorce. I mean, you still have a big gap, I think, between the way that society in general regards marriage and the way the church does. People really think about marriage, it's just about romantic commitment, two people who love each other, and for whatever period of time they love each other for. It's not the same thing as what we mean when we mean marriage. So
Sounds like we all agree. Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you.
So I had a question. You guys both mentioned that in the long run, the Constitution tends to support our stance here tonight, and I agree with you. My question, though, is the Ninth Circuit and the California Supreme Court sure don't seem to be showing a lot of deference towards the Constitution, and they are a pretty big roadblock between getting up to the Supreme Court of the United States, where hopefully we'll have a better venue now. Just wanted to hear your thoughts about how we can get around that, how we can work with that rather challenging roadblock.
Just keep doing as many appeals as we can to the Supreme Court. The Ninth Circuit is the most reversed court in the history of the United States, and probably will continue to be, particularly with the change on the U.S. Supreme Court. But I agree with you. We live in a very difficult state in terms of both our appellate state court system for the most part. Not so bad in San Diego, but LA, San Francisco is horrible in terms of the liberal judges. In the Ninth Circuit, it's just completely out of control. You know, I don't have the answer except that fortunately we have a president that's appointing much better judges. So it is changing, and that's the biggest ray of hope, is that we're getting much better federal judges right now. So with time, hopefully, we'll get some traction that way.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Father Chuck, hi. I'm Lucia Yandel. I just finished reading the book about Kim Davis's story, and I don't know if everyone knows about that. You may want to elaborate on that. But that's basically, she worked in Kentucky maybe?
Right.
And she was a marriage...
County clerk.
County clerk, and they would put out licenses, or at least...
Right.
Yeah, she didn't want her name on the license.
Right.
Long story about that. She went to jail for 6 days.
Right.
Great outpouring of prayer, she was released. So my question surrounds, is there anything that you can bring us as far as cases coming up regarding employment or employment discrimination for public servants, people such as myself who work for corporations? We certainly have talked about people in private industry. What's coming up?
Lots. I mean, the other side is continuing to file lawsuits to move their agenda forward, and we're continuing to fight those lawsuits. I can't tell you what specifically in terms of your employment, in terms of the wedding industry. We've got, again, our Arlene Flowers coming up. I don't know what's going to happen at this point with Kathy Miller's case. And we've got
Are you asking if you get fired from your job, can you, because of your religious beliefs?
Fired or discriminated against
because of your
for
religious beliefs,
advancement.
can you successfully sue your
Right.
employer who took this adverse action against you?
Thank you, Father.
Sure.
Under the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, it protects religious liberty as well. Now, the courts have not in California been as differential to religious liberty as they have to the sexual orientation issues, but for example, I represented the 4 Catholic firefighters that were ordered to be in the Gay Pride Parade, and we were successful suing under the Fair Employment and Housing Act, saying that that was a form of discrimination against them, that they had to participate in uniform on the job, sponsoring a message that they didn't agree with, being in the Gay Pride Parade. Not that they had any problem serving the gay community as firemen or as emergency medical providers, but just being there to make a political statement. And we did, win that case on appeal. So yes, there is protection, okay? It all depends upon who the judges are, because the Fair Employment and Housing Act is administered by bureaucrats who tend to be kind of liberal. But when we get it into courts, and with the case of the 4 firefighters, we were able to get it in front of a jury and make a strong case and prevailed at trial and prevailed on appeal. So yeah, there are laws that protect you. It's going to very much depend on the facts and circumstances of the individual case, though.
Sure. I work for an international national aerospace company. And this is the first year that Northrop put out an invitation to support the Gay Pride.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, what's going to come next? You know,
Well,
what I
that's
should
right.
look for.
Just quietly decline.
I deleted the email. My husband, I support you all. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming here tonight and giving me courage. I have a question about AB 2943. I follow loosely an organization called Church United, and went with them to DC last year to hear about what was happening here in California, and we were told about AB 2943 coming down the road.
Right.
Is there a Catholic church, or is the Catholic Church here in California have an organ doing something about the opposition and creating awareness for it?
Sorry, what is it again?
AB 2943 is the bill that they're trying to push here in California for not allowing you to give therapy to somebody who has
Sorry.
unwanted same-sex attraction.
Right.
Yeah. So the question is, is it just not just therapy? Is it therapy? Is it right now you can't give therapy to help people with unwanted who are minors, right?
Somebody who wants
Now it's going to be
therapy
It's
for
gonna be
unwanted
for
same-sex
everyone.
attraction.
Okay.
But it's worded broader than that. So it's not technically limited to therapy. It's really doing anything, including messages that people can and should
I
share.
think it's important for people to understand, actually, and you had the Jonah case too,
Right.
which was huge. But
Right.
there are people who have same-sex attractions that don't want to act on them and want help in different ways to reduce them, let's say, and who may have other experiences in their life that may have contributed to that. Okay,
Right, including sexual abuse by
right. There's I think people who are same-sex attracted have 4 or 5 times as much of a history of having been sexually abused when they're younger. So
Right.
so they may want a therapist who will treat them with that and try to help them not experience as much those unwanted attractions. So this bill would make it illegal for a person who wants it and a therapist who wants to give it to be in that patient-client relationship, right?
It would make it illegal
So
for
what is
someone
the
to
church-
give.
I don't think our bishops. They may have, but I don't know if they have. Have they?
There's an
spoken?
organization called the California Catholic Conference of Bishops, which has a lobbying wing in Sacramento. Ned DeLessi
Yes.
is executive director. I don't know what they're doing, and I'm sure
You can
they're opposing
you
this.
can
but we'll
Google
have to-
California Catholic Conference of Bishops, and they should have all their positions they're taking on.
Exactly.
But they haven't gotten the word out to us and the parishes if they're doing
But
it.
they have a website, and they'll tell you what they're doing on the website. California Catholic Conference of Bishops, and they'll state what they're doing.
Good evening. I'm a mother of 3 young children. So, Father, and I'm on the email of the Defense Fund, so I'm aware. So, thank you for your work. So, Father, as a mother of 3 young children, and on the way here, my teenager was telling me that the baker was discriminating because they were, they just didn't want to bake the cake because they were gay, but also she understands that because of First Amendment, the religious freedom, and they can't go against their conscience. So I was grappling with how do I explain with my teenager that as Catholic, we uphold our faith, and our religious liberty and freedom also extends into the marketplace, and it doesn't only.
I think the bigger issue. How old is your daughter?
She's turning 14, and
So
she's in public school.
Have you first talked to her, explained to her, had a conversation about why 2 men can't have sex with each other and 2 women can't have sex with each other?
Yes, we did have that conversation at home.
So, Jesus defined marriage as between a man and a woman. He goes back to Genesis. So you can ask her, do you think Jesus is a nice guy? Maybe she says yes. Well, is Jesus a bigot? Is Saint Paul a bigot? Okay, okay, this is the thing. Not all discrimination is bad. This is very key. Okay? There is unjust discrimination. So if you're a single person and someone asks you out and you say no, okay, they're discriminating against you. Maybe they don't like how you look. Maybe they don't like your breath. They discriminate. It's not unjust. Okay? If I want to play basketball for the Golden State Warriors and I go out and they don't let me play, they discriminate against me, right? Because of characteristics that are necessary to play basketball, right? And sexual complementary is necessary to enter into marriage. Okay? So someone who doesn't approve of same-sex marriage is not discriminating. Okay, it's not unjust discrimination. I think you got to help them. The kids today, they don't do any real, they're not thinking about the words and what they mean. So you got to give them a lot of different examples. So not all discrimination is bad. Say, yes, and you're discriminating in the sense of, yes, he will not do gay weddings, but he will do opposite-sex weddings. But it's not unjust discrimination because those are two different realities.
Okay.
One is a true marriage and one is a faux marriage.
Okay.
Okay. One can produce immortal beings, the other one can't.
Okay, so I have to teach them the difference between unjust discrimination
Yeah.
and
the
just
In
discrimination.
this context of why a same-sex marriage is just not a marriage.
I see. Okay.
And asking someone to participate in that is not just a matter of them, oh, I don't like gay people. You're asking them to do something that they fundamentally disagree with. It's not a marriage.
Let me go further as Christians, okay? It's very important to understand love the sinner and hate the sin, okay? This is very hard, but if I approve of you living against God's will, I am not loving you. I am encouraging you to persist in sin, okay? So actually, I am harming you. I am hating you by approving what you're doing, which is wrong and against God's will. Okay? So there's an objective good of the person. It's not about approving people whatever they choose for themselves. They may choose things that are separating themselves from God and are going to bring about terrible consequences. And so if we love them, we don't encourage. Just like if your teen decides that their identity is to be a heroin addict, okay? Well, you're not going to prove that because you
Yes,
love them.
definitely.
Because it will ruin their life, right? So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Father.
And it's got eternal consequences in that context. You know, if it's serious sin and you die in a state of serious sin, we as Catholics believe there's a heaven and hell. I mean, there's serious consequences to these decisions that we make on whether we're going to honor God's law on something as fundamental as marriage.
Yes. Okay, definitely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Kathy Miller, our hero.
Hi. Chuck didn't know I was coming tonight. This was a surprise.
Big surprise.
You just hit right on what I wanted, part of what I wanted to share, that I do have a little bit of a question that I wanted to share with you. When you're put in a situation, regardless of the situation, you have to remember to love the sinner and hate the sin. And Chuck helped me with that so much, because when the couple came into my bakery, I had to look at him and say, I'm sorry, I can't do your cake. And I looked at him and I said, I can't hurt my Lord and Savior. That's where these two men come in, because you have to be tight with your pastor, your priest, whatever church you go to. You need to be tight with them, because they are going to help you through that struggle. And then there was Chuck. And I can't even begin to tell you how much this man did for our family. The first time in the United States there was a baker, a photographer, whatever business, he placed our case in front of the judge in such a way that the judge saw the discrimination going on and saw how our religion was being persecuted, how our First Amendment right of freedom of speech was being taken away from us. But through Chuck's gracious words and his peaceable spirit, but yet right on point, he was able to show Judge Lampe, wait a minute, we have a situation here. And Judge Lampe saw it, and he made an amazing rendering, better than the Supreme Court's. So, give him a round of applause. Now, I want you to put yourself in my shoe. It might be at work, it might be in a volunteer position, wherever. You don't know. I had no idea on August 25th this was going to happen. I had no idea. And I had counsel from other wonderful religious attorneys who said, stop baking the cake. And my husband said, maybe you should stop baking. I said, I can't. Then I'm going to hurt all my Christian friends who really want to have me do their wedding cake. And there's all those couples that are a man and a woman that want me to do the cake. And I said, Chuck, what do I do? And he said, it's okay, bake the cake. We're just going to have to work through this. And he stood by me the whole way. So I really want you to do two things. I have to come up with a question, though, don't I?
No, no, I'm glad you spoke. You don't have to have a question. No.
We need to be keeping these men in prayer 24/7, because this is just the beginning.
Hi, thank you for being here. I think that a lot of us are saying, what can we do? And I think we need to vote in November.
Yes.
And in the meantime,
Yes.
we need to be doing research. And we need to be knowing what these candidates, especially that 9th District General Attorney, he's got to go. So, but there are, I have been going to a group called VIP, and they have all the candidates come, but they're only Christian, only the rules, and so we get to know those candidates. It's once a month. Anyone's welcome if you want more information. And that's at the Valley High too. And also there's, I go to, I hate dropping names, but the Republican, there's once a month, Monday night at Town and Country. They all come and they want candidates, and there's 189 spots not filled, and because I don't know all the legal stuff you guys, but if there's not filled by default, it goes to, if it's not by both candidates, a Republican and Democrat, by default it goes to. So there's 189 spots that are not filled by Republicans on the thing in November.
Elections do have consequences, and it's very important to stay informed, which is why you're here, and we appreciate that. I'll give you an example why some source of encouragement. We supported Summer Stephan for district attorney, a devout pro-life Catholic. George Soros came in and funded her opponent $1.5 million. But when it was clear her opponent couldn't win after they spent $900,000, they pulled the funding, and Summer Stephan still won hands down. So good people can win elections, and those elections are making the difference. So when Father said we have some sense of encouragement, I do when I see those kinds of things, and I see the judges that are now being appointed. So stay informed, and this lady's right, vote. And if you can run for office, run for office.
And don't just listen to the networks. You need to be listening to the candidates specifically. You don't, because, yeah, they distort the news. So you have to listen to the speech itself. You can do that on, on the internet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here this evening and going over the whole case that went to the Supreme Court. You had stated earlier, Father, that the majority opinion in regards to Mr. Jack, who went to other bakeries, was denied service because he asked for a cake with some sort of religious symbol, correct?
I'm sorry. Are you saying someone asked Jack Phillips for a cake with a religious symbol?
Yeah, you had mentioned a double standard.
I was making reference, yes, the double standard, and I don't know the details, but these involved gay bakers who didn't make cakes, and the person brought complaints, and the Civil Rights Commission of Colorado said the gay baker didn't have to bake the cake. But I don't know the details of what the cakes were.
Okay, because I read a little bit further into the case, and I just wanted to ask how you found that comparison, because the cake, the customer who asked a baker for a certain cake asked for 2 groomsmen with a red X on it. He also went to a second bakery that asked to write "God hates sin" on that cake.
Right.
And
God does hate sin, actually.
so,
True.
but true.
Yeah.
But
no, listen, I'm not saying I'm saying the Supreme Court, if you read the decision of the Supreme Court, especially the concurring opinion of Justice Roberts, they found that to be very illuminative, right? They say you can't do double standards is what they're saying. So I'm talking about what the Supreme Court said. Yeah.
I'm just going into the dissent. That's why I was asking, because she states that, Justice Ginsburg states that how can you make that comparison when somebody's asking for just a regular, beautiful cake versus a cake that actually has some kind of...
Isn't beauty in the eye of the beholder?
This is true,
case,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
Yes.
the case that was brought to the court was by a William Jack, in which 3 bakeries refused to create a cake for Jack with the message, homosexuality is a detestable sin, citing Leviticus 18:22. And the court said that's fine. Those bakeries did not have to make that cake. And the point being, why are they letting one baker off the hook when they're not going to make him put a Christian message on
it really depends. I know what you're saying. You're saying
Yeah, it just seems...
he's asking them to bake something nasty, and the gay people are asking him to bake something nice. But
Sure.
it really depends. Again, it's
On
the beauty
the
is the eye of the
person.
beholder in that one,
Understood.
right?
And you can't decide whose message.
And the court
is
can't
better.
be putting themselves in the, or the, so government shouldn't be putting
Yeah.
themselves in that position.
That's
But
right.
that's a good point, and it's good you bring up. I didn't remember the details, I just know
Okay.
that, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes, and my second question for you is, you had mentioned that there may have been a better way for them to have won that case, and you stated that they could have gone more into the First Amendment and the creative freedom expression. So I kind of would like maybe your opinion on what that would have looked like if you had done it yourself.
Actually,
If I
Pastries,
re-
pastries.
Yeah, well, it is the Pastries Bakery decision where the judge actually went through the analysis and said making a custom wedding cake with the type of skill that someone like Kathy Miller has is a form of artistic expression. And artistic expression, be it a painting or be it a sculptor or writing a poem, is protected speech under the Constitution. And also the court did not get to the question of free exercise of religion really so much either. It just focused on the hostility that was reflected by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission in that case. But other justices who wrote concurring opinions like Justice Thomas said, you reach that. That's why the free exercise of religion is there. They're not saying freedom of worship the way our opponents are trying to limit it. It's like you could say what you want when you're in church with Father on Sundays. No, free exercise means you go out in the public square in the marketplace, and that means someone who is in the wedding industry can practice their faith by saying, I will not adopt a message that I fundamentally disagree with on something as important as marriage. So they did not reach that point.
Actually,
and I
Chuck,
would have written,
could
I
you
would have
comment,
reached
because
that.
you're asking great questions. What's your name?
Christine?
Christine? What about the case, this is a speech case, about the abortion clinics and whether they have to refer people, the pro-life pregnancy centers, because that was a speech case, right? That Supreme Court decided that. So I think there was recently a case where a law said that, and my sister works for a pro-life family practice, so that you had to publicize that they could get abortions for free. And the court said that you're forcing them to say something that they are completely against, and you can't do that, right?
Exactly, and they got that one right, fortunately, and that was a very recent decision. So that's a good example. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, actually, I was going to talk about that Becerra case, I think it was, and it was kind of great that it was won, but 5-4 kind of scares me.
Right.
Right? You think it should have been 9-0, right? So how? I didn't really pay attention to it. How did the 4 dissenters come up with the fact that it was okay?
In my experience, and again, I hate to be cynical, but the judges who tend to be appointed by Republicans tend to vote one way. Judges who tend to be appointed by Democrats tend to vote another way, and it's very ideological. And the ideological motivated judges who are progressively minded, who don't feel they're bound by the text of the Constitution, tend to do what they want to do. And now that the court is changing, I think we're going to see less of that.
But I do think, I didn't get into the details, I do think, though, that there's this idea that, if the government requires you to put medically accurate information, put accurate information about a product, their idea was they're just they're requiring them to put accurate information about all their options, kind of thing. I'm not defending it. I'm just trying to look at it from their perspective. I think that's what they're saying. That it's not the same as. Is there 2 different kinds? Is there like a commercial speech, maybe sometimes treated differently?
Commercial speech is not given the same degree of protection generally as individual private speech. So I didn't actually read that decision, but I'm familiar with that line of thinking. In the medical context, you want to give people all their options. So I assume the liberals in the California state legislature said, well, you know, we have abortion rights in California. People should be aware that they have the right to get an abortion. And if they go to this clinic and they're not telling them about that option, then they're not serving the community, which is nonsense because everybody knows about abortion.
Do they require Planned Parenthood to tell if there's other options than
No.
abortion?
No, they don't.
I don't think
You're
they
right.
do that, right?
They don't
It's
do
very
that.
one-sided.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is scary. It's only 5'4", and that's
Yeah,
scary.
that scared me.
Yeah.
yeah, it should scare you.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much for
evening.
your time.
You're welcome.
I'm Sanat Peter. We have the hair salon just on the other side of the highway. We do have a coworker that was, we had a coworker that is gay, and he got for Christmas he got an ornament which it's a male mermaid. So he took it. He was so happy. He put it on my Christmas tree. And I was, okay, we'll put it here on the side because I felt like as a Christian I have to love everyone and accept everybody. Then I turned around a few minutes later, I saw the ornament on top of my Merry Christmas sign. I said, no, that's when I said, Michael, we have to move it. I moved it back. He goes, oh, I guess you don't support this. I said, no, there is a limit to everything. I want my Merry Christmas on top and all the other ornaments. Now, my question for you, Chuck, is what's the difference
Male
between
mermaids aren't necessarily gay. I mean,
Wait, is there something? I've never heard of male mermaids. Is there something?
They're called mermans.
Yeah, mermans, right?
I mean, it's wrong just making stuff up.
Like the Little Mermaid, there were mermen in the movie,
that's
like
right.
Ariel's dad and stuff like that.
They weren't gay, not to my knowledge.
Sorry, me no speak English. Anyway, so my question is, I told him that if he wants, he can have his own little Christmas tree or something, put it whatever he wants on it. What are my rights as a Christian? Like you see that, like the difference between a private business or a corporation, like what are my limits?
You're the owner of the company. So she wants to know, as the owner, what can she do regarding what?
Yeah, you get to basically set the terms for your own office. You can't force people to engage in a certain type of religious expression against their will, but you can certainly exercise your will as the owner of the office. You're not doing it in any kind of offensive way. Okay, now if you work for someone else, it gets a little bit more dicey because they get to kind of say how they want it their way, so long as they're not unduly infringing on your religious liberty. But in this situation, you know, you have a Christmas tree, you have a Merry Christmas sign. If people want to put up ornaments, you don't even have to let them. But if you want to let them, then they put up appropriate ornaments in the manner that you like. It's your office. Okay, no one has a constitutional right to put up ornaments in their workplace, for Pete's sake. So as long as the ornaments that you're putting up are not offensive to people, you're not putting swastikas or something on it. So I don't really see where that's an issue. You're perfectly within your rights.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's awesome.
But I would say though, hold on. Let's say this guy, maybe he's the best hair cutter in the world, right? And he maybe is, right? Best
Women loves him, yes.
in the world, right? But let's just say he decides he's going to be late to work sometimes, he's not going to come in, and you end up having to terminate him for good cause, right? Mm-hmm. And then later he goes back and says, she terminated me because of my sexual orientation. And you know what? Remember I tried to put the ornament? I'm not trying to make you paranoid.
You're absolutely
but I'm
right,
just
because we
saying,
have to document
when
everything.
when you terminate someone, even if you have legitimate reasons, they can always say it was because they were a member of a protected class. So I think you're right. You can do what you want in your shop, but...
I forgot we have a priest who used to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, one more.
He's right. People can always look for a way to sue you
you
do something they don't like. And if you're dealing with someone who is in a potentially protected class, you should be aware of that. But I don't really think this rises to that kind of situation.
You're probably right.
But nonetheless, in the world we live in, clever as serpents, innocent as doves. So you need to be aware of these things. The Father's absolutely correct. It's good legal advice. You know, if you're going to draw the line on something, make sure it matters. I'm not sure the mermaid does, but I still wouldn't want to put it above the Merry Christmas.
It was a sensitive subject. Excuse me, just explanation. When you go to any business, a lot of times they say, we have the right to refuse service to anyone.
Yeah,
Would you be kind enough to explain that?
They can't refuse service based upon
A protected class.
characteristics like say, race, gender.
If they could on a non-protected class, they could, so if you could refuse service if someone works for the Trump administration, right? Legally, you can't, right?
You can.
Yeah, but not if they're, you have to be, if it's a protected class, you can't. So if someone, because of their age, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, you cannot refuse them service based on that.
I mean, you can refuse them service if they're creating a disturbance or they're, unhygienic or something like that in an evening.
Or even if you just don't like them, but it can't be because you don't like them because of that.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
This is back to religion. We do have clients, all different kinds and everything, being in the hair salon. We do have a client now that is transferring from a male to a female. I don't think it's right for us to refuse service for him just because.
No one says you have.
I don't think you should refuse service. And the hair, there are guys who style their hair like girls anyways, and girls who style their hair like guys. So you're not. But if you were involved in surgery, I would say you would not be involved in surgery to remove his mutilative surgery.
Where it gets uncomfortable for someone like me, and I don't necessarily think it's a moral question, you start buying into their delusion. Now you have to call them by their new gender and new name. It's one thing to just to do their hair. Hair is hair, but are you going to have to now acknowledge what they have done? And so that becomes, and how you deal with that is going to be the challenge. And you got to be caring and compassionate, but not necessarily indulge them in that fantasy.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Last question. I promise. How would you lovingly ask someone not to participate in the gay parade?
How would you lovingly what?
Ask someone not to participate in the gay parade.
Well, it depends what the circumstances
What's your
are.
relationship?
Yeah, right.
A relative.
Well, you can have a discussion with them.
Yeah,
about
I would
what the
ask
gay
them
pride-
why do you want to go to the parade? What are you trying to say?
First of all, it's very lewd. There's a lot of nudity at the gay pride, and a lot of what I did in the trial with the 4 firefighters is every time a witness, I had like a checklist, was able to say they saw some obscenity or some lewd act or something that would otherwise never be permissible in public if it was 2 heterosexuals, we put a check mark, and by the end of the trial, I just had this big board with check marks all over the place. And if it was any other office or workplace, they would never tolerate that type of obscenity or vulgarity or lewd acts. Well, that's the workplace of these firefighters.
It would be considered a hostile environment, actually, if you.
And that was the basis for the decision.
Anyway, I would have a conversation with, try to understand why, and you explain why you think it's.
You see some of the pictures of the
why
gay
you think
pride
it's not helpful. I think, listen, we need to love people who have same-sex attraction and relate with them, work with them, but the idea of gay pride, that someone takes pride in attraction to do something sinful, I think is very misplaced. So, yeah.
You're welcome. Okay.
So, thank you all for being here. We're going to try to get an edited version of this. I mean, just, done up, so put on the website if you want to share with your family and friends. Okay, go ahead.
Regarding the gay pride parade, our son is gay, and he participates, but he understands we don't agree with him on same-sex marriage and stuff like that, so we don't go to the pride parade. It was just a decision we made, and he honors that. We honor him. We love him. We accept him. I would never turn him away, and I think that you just have to explain why you do things, and when you get that understanding relationship.
But he respects your decision not to go, and he doesn't think you hate him because of.
No, I wouldn't necessarily mind going. They have games and stuff like that, and the parade like that. Because that's pretty innocent. But the parade itself it's gotten better because they've been trying to tone it down because of they got families going there and all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't take kids to that thing. I wouldn't do it.
Nudity too.
I wouldn't do it.
Simulated sex acts. It's from at least what I saw with regard to the aspects of the parade in the context of the trial of the firefighters. It's pretty shocking, some of the stuff that goes on.
I know. And the last thing I question is, okay, in terms of the making the cakes and all that, what is the difference of, let's say, an African-American baker, and he gets, not like it's going to happen, but he would get asked by a Ku Klux Klan to make a cake with a Klansman on it, and he refuses. I think a lot of the courts would say, well, sure, he can refuse.
Right.
So what's the difference between that and what,
because there are lines in a civilized society where we can objectively say that that clearly is hate speech because of the history associated with the Ku Klux Klan, lynching people and the violence associated with that. That's entirely different than our beliefs as Christians, which call for love and sensitivity and compassion. They're really not the same. And there are legitimate distinctions that can and should be made when you have a track record of violence and real hatred. And so I believe that is a distinction that should be recognized by clear-thinking people, including, hopefully, judges sitting on the courts.
Well, listen, thank you all for being here, and let's give Chuck a big round of applause because he's a very busy guy. And if you want to check out Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund, they have a table over there at that exit, and you can get more information. If you want a blessing, you can stand, and I'll give you a blessing before we go. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless and keep you this evening and always. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace.
Thank you.